should mean that we are on camera and saying hello to everybody. So once you can hear my voice, we will get the show started here. I always do the beginning delay just to make sure that things are working and we don't have any last minute surprise technical issues. I see looking good. They can hear me. All right. Everyone, welcome to dev stream number 4 of Jagged Alliance 3. I am joined by my lovely friends Nelson and Pavel. Hey Nelson, hey Pavel, how you doing today?
Hello, I'm Nelson. Yeah, feeling quite good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so Nelson, this is your first time on today. Pavel's here just to say hi. He's our anchor person. We're actually going to be mostly talking with Nelson today, but Pavel will come back for the Q&A section. But I figured might as well start and say hi and see everybody. Pavel, how are you doing?
It's been a long time coming, and it's gonna be a fairly fast and really interesting sprint to get this thing out of the gate. So
yeah,
we're excited.
I saw people. Wait, okay. It says the stream just died, but I see everything moving. Oh, okay. No, the stream's fine. Yeah, I saw people in chat already mentioning about exciting that we actually put a release date out and then it's coming very soon. So I think people were surprised by that. But yeah, if you haven't heard, we've announced the release date. It's going to be coming up in July, very, very quickly on us, July 14th. So mark your calendars and get ready because Jagged Alliance 3 is just around the corner. You guys got a lot of work to do before then.
Yeah. The final stretch.
Yeah, the final stretch. But I mean, we've been working on this thing for a while together, so it's always fun, stressful and exciting, but always fun seeing it coming right around the corner.
It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
We are polishing the corners.
Yeah.
Yes, polishing the corners. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Well, Pavel, let me go ahead and get. We'll do Nelson conversations here. We'll bring you back for the question and answer section, and we'll have you back then. So say bye to everybody. We'll see you in a little bit.
See you in a little bit, guys.
And Nelson, you are the star. So, so just before we get into this stream, I did mention last stream that we're going to do a couple more T-shirts for the giveaway today. So I want to kind of frame that up. We're going to do the giveaway near the end of the stream, and we're going to have a few questions that are based, 2 questions that are going to be based on the stream as we go. So for those that are here, you may want to pay attention and keep your notepads out, or your mental notepads going. Yep, those are the T-shirts. We're going to give away 2 of them near the end of the stream during the question and answer session. So just keep, maybe stay aware of the little things we're talking about, and you'll be able to pick up maybe one of these awesome T-shirts that we're wearing here during the stream. So, yeah, right. I think Pavel makes a great model. I don't know if he intended to be Pavel famous with the T-shirts, but there you go. So, Nelson, so why don't you tell everyone your role in the project and what you're doing with Jagged Alliance 3?
Okay, I'm the art director of Jagged Alliance 3, and my role revolves around making sure that I help out the team creating a vision, a specific look for the game, and follow it through development and make sure that everything is following that initial idea that we had in the beginning. So that's mostly it.
Yeah, and I think this it's been it's a very unique challenge with a game like Jagged Alliance or any of these turn-based or top-down games, because the camera angle and the perspective, how you kind of make those visuals come to life when you're not like really immersed lower into the game experience. It's a tricky problem to solve. But you guys have a lot of experience. That's one of Hemamon's specialties, right? That's what you guys do.
Yeah. We make those kinds of games, and it was really challenging to make the game look both beautiful and impressive in the tactical view and on the top view, and when the camera zooms down and you see your merc in the full detail.
Yeah, but, I think. Go ahead, sorry.
But I think what we've done and how the game right now, how it looks, I think we kind of managed to achieve that. So I'm very proud of the team.
Yeah, I think there's I'm guessing later on we'll have a dev diary. We talk specifically about the art, and we'll go through animations and visuals and all that. But today we're really just talking about UI. And if you haven't read, we did post a dev diary a couple days ago. It's dev diary number 5, I think, or number 7 actually. Sorry, and it's on our community site. So It's community.jaggedalliance.com, and that's where you can read about the kind of development of our user interface, and that's what we're specializing about today as far as the topic is concerned. So feel free to check out the community site and read it on your own. And today we're talking about UI. So for those people who are interested in the user interface and how we build it, that's what we're talking about. So with the UI, it was something that we really debated about a lot because, as far as Jagged Alliance is concerned, especially the first and second game, UI it's almost like it had its own character to it. It wasn't just a menu that you use to click on things.
Yeah, I agree. I still remember the first time that I saw back in the day when I saw the Jagged Alliance 2 interface, and it's almost like a game in a game. It's so fully realized, and you had all those small details that make it like the real thing, like you're feeling that you're interacting with an operational system. In this case, it was a laptop. So it was very ahead of its time, even then.
Yeah, I remember when we were in early pre-production. It was the first kind of initial exercises we took in the user interface were all I don't want to say traditional, but they were normal UI designs and approaches that you would see in a modern game, right? Like certain styles of buttons and menus. And the idea that we started experimenting with really early on was that we needed to do something that was fresh to what we were doing for our era of approach, but had the personality that you would expect from a Jagged Alliance experience in the UI.
Yeah, I remember us discussing because the early prototypes, they were all functional. They more or less were okay-ish design, and we could just ship the game with it. But they all missed the mark when it comes to the big fantasy. And I remember that we had at some point come up with the word fantasy. We want not only the UI to be good-looking or functional, we want to fit the whole idea about the game. We wanted to bring back the appeal of Jagged Alliance to where you interact with a device, and that unlocked all kinds of possibilities for us. I think it was very good. Yeah.
And I feel like in the beginning, it would have been easy for us to slot right in. Yeah, everyone's like, was it a internet connection on the island is spotty? Grand Chien, they don't, that satellite internet's not always what it's cracked up to be. I feel like it would have been easy for us to just slot back into a laptop type approach, and I think that's kind of where we started. But the idea was to be a little more creative and try something different. And I think we did a lot of research on the old internet and old devices, and trying to get ourselves back into the late 90s, early 2000s mindset of like what did people have back then.
Yeah. I remember us discussing what was our favorite communication application and what devices did we use for using internet back then, because it was right at the end of the analog age and the start of the digital one, and devices were a little bit crude at that time, but it was a very interesting research time.
Yeah, I know Buyan posted this in the article. I myself also was a Palm user for a while, and Palm devices were something that we very quickly were like, man, if you were going to be mobile and on the go back in the late 90s, early 2000s, even before, everyone immediately goes to, Blackberries, but Blackberries were post Palm. Like Palm was first. Yeah. The original Palm 3C. I think my first Palm was a Palm 3C. It was still the it wasn't even black and white. It was black and green. It had that green black backlit screen. And those were the Palm 3 and the Palm 5. Those were the mainstay first mobile PDAs that everyone had.
Yeah, I remember I had not a Palm brand, but I had a bootleg personal PDA, and it was like a monochrome, green and black, something like that. But it was all the rage back then. Yeah.
I'm wondering how many people in chat actually had, and this will probably age people in chat if they had one, but how many people in chat actually did have an old school Palm? Because those were definitely that was the jam for a while. If you had a Palm, you were cool. Yeah, and it was also looking at Giblik says I refuse to answer. Yeah, well now I know then. What's really interesting is they also didn't like and a lot of people don't realize this, but the very first smartphones were actually Palm smartphones, and I will admit that I had the Palm Kyocera smartphone. It was the second of the Palm phones that were released, and it was this big like fold out monster that was I remember when I was walking around, sometimes I think people were like, dude, this phone is so huge, because back then everything was like the old school Nokias, and you had this like giant Palm phone that you had to hold up to your face. It was fun though. Palms were it was a neat time, and that was really started with the reference points for like what we wanted the device to be. We didn't want it to be a laptop, and I know in like the UI it looks a little tablet like, but we were trying to channel Palm. Like even the button on the side with the little power button and the blinking light. That's what we were trying to channel when it comes to making it look like something that was from that era.
And even the name Oak 2 is a nod to the Palm devices.
Yeah.
And and everything inside the operational systems kind of reminds of the operational systems from that time, the Palm and Windows Mobile and all that.
Yeah, it was also one of those tricky things. I mean, this sounds silly, but like when we were talking about even the like the icon design, I remember some of the first icons we messed with looked too like almost it looked too Windows 2000 post. Everything looked too modern. And I remember like passing around back and forth reference images of what did the Palm OS actually look like how small and not like necessarily low res, but just the design of them was a little bit different back then. It wasn't, and it's weird to look back because you don't really remember just how clunky or simple things were. And I remember we would have these debates during some of our meetings, like, it wasn't that bad, was it? And you go look back, you're like, oh god, no, it really was that bad. It was 1999 or 2002. Like things were different back then. It's like what's that phrase? The long ago, right? The long ago of the world.
The old net, yeah. And
Yeah,
I do remember us having discussions like, should we add like a buffering icon when you switch between, and we have something similar in the game. When you switch between different applications, you see like a loading detail. So we really try to go back and see how internet was back then and how we used to interact with it. And I think in the end, all those discussions, because there were so many discussions about the smallest details, but they paid off. And
It was what was your most fond memory of looking back at old school internet? Because that was also yeah. So someone just referenced OS2 Warp. Jeez, man, Giblix, you better be careful. Like you're definitely. I'll self-admit that one of my first PCs was an old school 486 when I was running old school DOS. Yeah, that's right, thqnordic DOS 6.22. So we've all been there. So what was your fondest like 90s 2000s memory when we were looking back? What was the one that you're like, oh man, I remember that?
I remember vividly the first time that we used IRC, and we communicated with someone in the States, and it was like mind-blowing back then, because to this day the world was kind of your city and your alley and your friends, and from one point you could speak to people all around the world. And I remember us installing IRC, ICQ, and talking to with all the quirky language that we had back then, like commands and emojis. It was a very interesting time, very different from how communication is right now.
Yeah, Redglyph, by the way, I agree. I didn't have a Commodore 64, though. I had friends that had them, so I'd go to my friend's place to play Commodore 64. But our first, we had an old computer that my dad had from work a little. I don't remember what it was, but the first, like, home computer that I actually had access to on a regular basis was a 486. I think mine was an SX, not a DX. My first machine I probably messed on was like a Apple II at school and a Commodore 64 at my friend's place. Yeah, and I remember when we were talking about like ICQ and IRC, and AIM for all the Americans out there. AIM was the big first. It was text messaging before text messaging was cool. That's what we did in the late '90s, early 2000s. Was all AIM messaging. When we had that first conversation, I couldn't remember mine because I use AIM more than I use Iris or ICQ. But there were people in the room that remember their ICQ numbers still. Like they could spout it off like that. Like ICQ was it's almost like your first phone number growing up. Like people knew their ICQ numbers.
Yeah, I agree. I don't remember mine, but I remember the nicknames in some of those applications that I used back then.
Yeah, I remember we had someone helping us with the UI as a consultant, and we were having to pull up like old interfaces because she's a little bit younger, and it's like she was like, I wasn't around back in like the late '90s, early 2000s using these messaging services, and I remember having to pull up like old AIM image references and pulling up IRC, and I actually used and this will see who was in the cool club when it comes to instant messaging in the late '90s, early 2000s. I used an application called Trillion for a while, and Trillion allowed you to do ICQ, IRC, MSN, AIM all in one app, and you could have all your different like lists all combined together. Trillion was like my go-to for a long time because it allowed you to access all of it instead of having like 5 things running. It was a fun, and so like this is a fun thing that we did as part of this UI exercise because I mean some of it's nostalgia and it's definitely kind of cool looking back, but we wanted to immerse ourselves in like what we wanted the UI to feel like. You know, we had the functional like the UX flow of everything, and that UX was really important, but we wanted to get that feeling of what it was to be navigating the old internet. There were weird like pop-up ads, and there were strange banner ads, and like the web design was a little bit different, and obviously there's modern UX in all of the UIs. Well, the game needs to feel comfortable, but that was something we really needed to get into in order to produce something visually, the style of it that was going to harken back to the right era.
Yeah, I agree. And in the end, it all connects to all kinds of different aspects of the UI. The general idea that the player is a commander who is sitting in an undisclosed location, and you're interacting with your mercs via this device, this PDA device. And once we had once we made the decision, we had the idea about that we want to do a device. It all made a lot of sense, and it was
Yeah, I don't know if Simon has. I think we do have an image that shows like the Snipe interface. So Snipe was our kind of reference to the old messaging services, and that was it grew. There it is, right? Like we grew a lot of inspiration from AIM. Which was kind of the American centric messaging system. It also still has a little bit of ICQ. The ICQ could be skinned to whatever you want it to be, but we tried to get even like the color and the back and forth style. The AIM bot originally was kind of inspired by this is again we're gonna go back in memory lane for all the guys who remember. One of the first chat bots was called Smarter Child, which was an old AIM bot back in, I want to say like 2000, 2001. I remember having conversations with Smart Child back, and we actually pulled up Smart Child reference images, and we're like, okay, we want the responses to kind of feel like this with this AIM bot kind of thing. So there were some cool little tropes there that we threw back. And here's some of the old, he's pulling up some of the old designs as we were kind of navigating different concepts and different layouts. I'm really happy with where we ended up. I think it has that nice vintage feel to it, but it also, you're not confused about what actions you're taking. You kind of get how you hire people. I think it works quite well.
I agree. It looks like oldnet, but it's purely functional, and it's modern in the UX department. It's easy to use, which is very important. Yeah.
Now, so moving on to the in-game, we'll step away from the UI for the device for a second. For the in-game style, what were some of the things that we were thinking about with like the HUD and the interaction icons and kind of that style there?
as I mentioned before, the big idea behind the UI is that you, as a player, you are the commander, and you are
Oh, by the way,
looking.
these are old screenshots he's showing right here. So these are the ones that led up to these are like old ideations when we were first starting to mess with some of these concepts. I want to clarify because that's not what the game looks like right now. That's the iterations from a number of years ago when we were first experimenting. 'Cause I recognize the kind of era because it's that pop-up button on the bottom right for the weird like which didn't work so great. That was a little bit confusing. Sorry, go ahead. I was just adding some clarity there.
Yeah, especially for the hut, I remember us doing so much iterations, so much work went into what we have right now. But the goal was we wanted to emphasize that the idea is that you have different programs in applications in your PDA, and especially in the hut, it's an extension of the SATView application. You have the command like operational system command button, which brings all the other submenus. And of course, when you interact with this device and you are somewhere in undisclosed location, what you see sometimes is hampered by bad connection, and you see a lot of visual elements in the way we approach creating the UI elements. You see like sometimes the picture is loading. We have like buffering effects on. For instance, if you see some of the enemies that are hiding somewhere in a fog, you see that your device is not able to recognize them. It's a little bit noisy and sketchy. And we revolved all of the visual look of the UI elements around that idea that you are looking through some almost like a drone device, and you're looking at your personal digital assistant.
Yeah, I think Simon, if you can put one of the current game or the more latest UI in-game UIs, we can show what we're talking about there. Yeah, I think where we started, I remember the very first drafts of the in-game HUD. We were trying to draw inspiration from kind of the militaristic mercenary side of things. We had a lot of, I wouldn't say camo, but it was very like modern military, something you'd see in like something if you were out in the wilderness on like on a device, and it didn't really, it felt a little too clean and a little too like camo-esque. And where we headed with this was to kind of bring that kind of device button, the icons again. When you talk about the palm inspiration, those icons are all drawn in a way that you could have maybe even seen them at home on an old palm device. For some people that don't notice this, the command icon, even at the bottom left, is an inspiration from the original kind of. This is current. This is current. The palm icon on the left, or the command icon on the left, is an inspiration from old Windows kind of interfaces where you had that like pop up in the start menu, old school start menu. So this is kind of where we ended up. But I mean, again, it's still very readable. A lot of the interface options are I think very modern in their style, but you get a little bit of that kind of retro flat design with the icons and everything. And I think it worked quite well.
Yeah, I agree.
It definitely was it was interesting though because it's one of those things where there was a lot. I'm not gonna. There were let's just say a lot of people had many opinions all throughout the UI process, and I remember at one point there were so many different opinions flying around, and I think I may have pulled rank at one point and said, all right, you know what, we're gonna just reduce the amount of voices down to like 2 people for about a month, and then we'll come back, because it was like it's everyone has had so much input. It was like, I think we even said in the diary, I'm 100% convinced that the UI is probably what went through the most iteration on the project, because we spent so much time trying to get that flavor and that feeling right while still creating a modern approach. And it's difficult. I mean, especially when you're trying to, and I think, and I mean, obviously, we hope that you guys appreciate this. We won't know until you actually have a chance to play the game in a month or so. But it was something that we didn't want to give up the legacy of the franchise. We didn't want to give up that immersive. It was a lot of times we're like, you know what, this is too hard. We should just go with a traditional pause menu style user interface and a modern inventory system, and stop trying to make it so immersive and retro. And we just were like, you know what though, but that's not Jagged Alliance, right? Like the laptop, that email interface, the way that you experience Jagged Alliance, that's what makes it work. And so there was this, I guess, this tenacity, this commitment to bringing that vision to life. And I think I'm really hoping that when people play it, they're going to enjoy that the effort we poured into it. Hopefully, you'll like it.
Again, I agree, because it was not the easiest decision for us to go this route. It could be easier for just to go for a modern look, but in the end, all of our efforts and previous mockups and designs were lacking in that Jagged Alliance feel, and it was hard to get to where we are right now. But in the end, I really hope that people will enjoy that retro feel, and an user interface that it's not only functional, but it fits the world and the team and everything.
Yeah. So and this is a good segue into the what actually became the most difficult problem to solve. We had a lot of problems to solve with the UI, but as far as the structure and the visuals, the hardest problem to solve was the inventory screen. And not because, I mean, inventory screens are always very difficult, but it didn't make any sense in the fantasy of the device. And we struggled with this greatly. I mean, this was a problem that went back and forth with a lot of different debates and how we were going to try it, because when we put the inventory into the PDA, it didn't make any sense. Like, why would you have a physical inventory in the PDA? And we did actually have it there for a while. And then we're like, but if we have all of the, comms and satellite view and everything in the PDA, but then we have this gamey, pause menu-esque inventory, then that also doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fit. So what are we going to do? And we tried so many different approaches until we finally settled in on this kind of like a military case, which, if you guys saw last stream with the collector's edition, the special edition for Jagged Alliance, we have a case as part of our collector's edition package. I think it just shows how much it became a thing for us. But that was a big hurdle to cross on whether we could make the UI work for the inventory in the way that it did.
I vividly remember the debates on both sides and the arguments. And in the end, I think we've managed to create, again, a physical feel of the user interface that works. And I think all the camps are happy. And again, I hope that people will enjoy interacting with this interface.
Yeah, Gallant. We announced the collector's edition, I want to say 2 weeks ago, and we showed the trailer during dev stream number 3. So if you go search, there is a collector's edition trailer out there. I don't know when the pre-orders for that are going live, because I know it's a limited. There's a limited count of them. We don't have, but there's an actual physical, like, military style case that you can put your laptop in. I believe it's big enough for like a 15-inch or a 14-inch laptop, and a couple. Oh, it already sold out? Okay, well then there you go. There may be other runs of it. I'm not sure if it's all Amazon. I'm not 100% sure, because I know. Okay, well then there you go. I shouldn't be advertising the collector's edition because they sold out instantly. They were really cool. We had a lot of fun designing all the different elements of the collector's edition. So I'm glad they're a hot ticket item. Maybe that'll inspire us to make some more. We'll see. But someone who was it? The Spine Duke was asking for some inventory prototypes. I actually should have grabbed some of the old ones. If you can pull the inventory screen up again, Simon. There was an interesting debate, because originally we had like buttons in the inventory screen to move you back to the tablet, but that was super weird, because it's like, why would I sit there in an inventory box and hit a button and take me back to the inventory tablet? And then at one point we had like left and right arrows on either side to swap between each thing, and that didn't work because it was super confusing. We talked about having an animation where like we would close the thing and then put the tablet down and then pull the thing up and put the thing down, and those prototypes didn't work because, again, it was just too much. It was too slow, even though we tried to make it more immersive. I actually think that just the quick, snappy go between them, which we thought was going to be a little bit confusing, actually is not at all. It actually works quite seamlessly. And we use that command button that's up there all the time to be the thing that laces everything together, but it kind of feels HUD-like. It doesn't feel like it's in the world. it was an interesting exercise for sure.
Yeah, we had so many variants. Like it was like backpack back then. I think they were like
Oh, that's
in,
right. Oh man, I
yeah,
forgot about the backpack. The backpack didn't
yeah,
work at all. That's
at all.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, because the backpack was like on its side and we wanted to open it, but then it looked like you didn't know what it was.
yeah,
That's where like the military case idea came from. Man alive. Completely forgot about the backpack. Now you're taking me down memory lane. That was an approach that we got stuck on for a good month or so, is the backpack iterations. Jesus. Actually, I may have a little PTSD from that process.
from all the talks. Yeah,
God almighty. There was like a weekly UI sync just to try to get that figured out, and it didn't go very well most of the time. Um, no, another big challenge that we didn't talk about in the dev diary that much, but I think it's worth talking about a little bit here. Well, we'll get there. Actually, it's related to the next topic. So the next thing we talked about in the dev diary was the portraits, and I know there's a lot of debate about the portraits and people wanting them animated, but the portraits themselves were something that we had to be really careful with because, and this may not seem obvious, but with the fidelity of graphics now, it takes a long time to produce content. Right, content is
yeah,
expensive. And we had a tremendous number of characters, right? We have 40 individual mercs plus all the NPCs. And I remember we were doing budgeting exercises and scheduling exercises for how much it was going to take for us to create all this content. And it's like every single one is like multiplied by 70 or 80. So any approach we do has to scale all the way up. And that means if we have different poses or different emotions, it's not just times like 15 or 20, it's times 80. And there was a lot of like experiments we did with the portrait exercise. I know you were heavily directing a lot of that.
yeah. I was involved throughout the process, and early on we kind of knew that mercs are it's central for the franchise, and we need to do them right. We need to try and bring from Jagged Alliance 2 and some characters from the Jagged Alliance 1 game. We want to modernize them, but keep the feel of the character intact. Because back then you had the small portrait, and they were fully voiced in the second game, and of course in the third as well.
Yeah.
And you build your perception of how they look more or less from the voice and from the small portrait. For the third game, we wanted to build upon that and to create like unique outfits for each and every one. And this was very challenging because we understand that people are grown to love. They have connections to the characters, and it's really hard to pinpoint what's important for this specific, let's say, buns, how she should be quoted. And I do remember all the discussions that we had. It was maybe close to the amount that we spent on the UI for the characters. It was so much time, and the process always starts with one of the bouillons. The designers give us like 3 or 4 page document of this is how she or he is characterized in the previous game, and then we kickstart the process of searching the references, looking at old action movies, and coming up with outfit for each and every one. It was very time consuming, and at the end, I do believe that when we were debating on because of course we try to have different poses and other experiments, but in the end, it was very important for us to focus and make them right. To make sure
Yeah.
if we are going to do something with them, it needs to be something unique for each and every one of them. And in the end, I think if people, when they have the chance to play the game, if they like even 50% of them, and they are not sure about 2 or 3, I think that's okay, because that's I think it's showing that the personalities, they are characters, and it's not usually how it's not that you like every person in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was one of those exercises that and Pavel I think is off screen. He was a big part of this because for the early stages of the project, Pavel was driving a lot of our art pipeline processes and scheduling, and we did a number of experiments in pre-production when we were really wildly experimenting. Like, what could we do? We tried taking the 3D models and importing them into some kind of like state where we could. Is one of the ideas when maybe we can do some of the emotional stuff where you have different like poses and different animations, and we were trying to see how that would work, but the fidelity wasn't quite right because we weren't building models to use that level of close-upness on their face. Like, it's a top-down game, right? So taking all 70 or 80 characters and then doing a high poly version that would look really good on that tight a camera with face animations was going to be a huge budget increase at a scale that wasn't really going to work in any way, shape, or form. Because we'd have to build basically two versions of each character, one that would work with the top-down camera, and then one that would be used for this thing, and it was not scale properly. And then we tried a couple different ways of shortcutting the 2D versions. We decided the 3D versions were just not going to work. It was not an option that was going to make sense. We tried to do different approaches to 2D. We tried 2.5D wrappings of certain things. We tried if we could do some animations on the 2D front, and everything we experimented with at scale just had problems. We'd sit there and look at we had the budget numbers, and we were looking at how much it was going to take even to do what we were like the version we took, which is not the cheapest version. It was definitely like the full body size. We decided to go with the larger characters. We wanted to get all of the outfits on there and the things that kind of show their character. That was kind of a commitment of fidelity, but every time we tried to look at the scale we were going to build this content in and the visual in for those UI elements, it was tough. And I think what we have, I personally really like the personality and the character that comes out from the poses and the outfits and everything. I think it worked really well. I understand that a lot of people have memories of the game from, the late 90s or 2000s when the portraits were like this big and you're only animating a face, and like you don't have to worry about necessarily the scale of modern, game development, which is way more expensive and way more time consuming and a lot more people involved. Just because of like, it's funny, people's expectations are higher, but their memory of what was then is disconnected from their modern expectations. So that's always kind of a tricky balance when you're trying to figure out how to bring these things to life. But I really I think the Merc portraits are beautiful. I think they came together really nicely, and I think the team deserves a big a pat on the back for just making those characters come to life.
I think when people have the chance to interact with them and to see some of the poses I think are fitting the characters like a glove. And
Well,
I
that
think
was actually, sorry to jump in. Another challenge, I forgot about this. We also talked about what I call the RimWorld problem, or not the RimWorld problem, but how RimWorld had to approach this thing too, because they didn't want the. We debated about whether we wanted to tell the player what to feel or let the player make their own decision about how they felt. Because another part of Jagged Alliance is making your own decisions in context emotionally with whatever fantasy you're trying to play. So once the characters started expressing emotion, then we were telling the player what their fantasy was. And there's an interesting talk about the RimWorld devs talking about how they didn't want to add faces to their characters because they wanted the audience to make their own decisions about how they felt in each scene and what fantasy they were playing. So it was another thing with us where if we had all of the portraits have a personality presentation as opposed to an emotional reaction, then the player's decision about were they being mean right now or nice or whatever, that would help them have their own interpretation of what they were feeling in that particular story point.
Yeah, I agree. There's a case to be made why some protagonists in games don't talk. And in this case, we decided that we don't want to make them express too much emotion. The poses for the characters, I think, capture the essence of each and every one of them. But the rest we leave to the player to envision them how they will do something specific in the world. Yeah.
Another UI that we didn't talk about in the diary though related to this was the UI we used for the interactions, like when you're actually in the dialogue system, and that was another one that went through a number of different iterations. Even when we in the earlier version, I remember we were worried about telegraphing to the player when an important decision was happening, and so we didn't have any feedback on if this was a critical decision or if it wasn't. And we were getting some of that early responses where you're just like, but man, you may make a choice that has an impact and then not realize it and really mess something up. So that was another debate about giving some context or not giving enough or giving too much, that we had to kind of use as a balancing act, which all came off of the UI. It's a design problem, but it was a UI solve, how we were going to present that information.
Yeah, and I think in the end it works quite well, because there are times in the game where you need to make a quick decision about something that will have consequences down the road. And I think we struck a middle ground of informing the player, but not spoiling like anything important. And this UI, I do remember that it was a little bit challenging to create, but in the end, with everything that we added, it all connects very good with the rest of the game, like having leaves fall during conversations, or if it's raining, because weather is huge part in Jagged Alliance 3. You will see this in conversation. Small stuff like that, I think, really helps gluing all the different aspects of the game.
Yeah, I think we probably are going to talk about this in a future dev diary, but the text approach of the response options, like there were ones where we actually had like emotional words in there, or like what you were saying back, and we ended up replacing those with more single word phrases that were more about the tone of the response as opposed to saying what you were trying to say and then having that fill in. And we looked at a whole bunch of other role-playing games out there as reference points. I remember the Bouillons and all of us sitting around all these different examples and going, what if we did this? What if we did that? And I actually, if I remember correctly, there was a build where we had, or a sequence of builds where we actually tried 3 or 4 different types of interactions for the same couple dialogue systems, like the same couple quest interactions, to see which one we thought felt more Jagged Alliance like or felt more free. And a lot of that was combined with UI changes too, because it was the text, it was the UI, what allowed the player to feel like they had the most freedom and the most while still maintaining some awareness of what the tone of the response is going to be. So it's funny, like there's maybe people who are here to listen to these streams. There's a lot that goes into game development that I don't think anyone that's not done it realize. Like, there's just so many little details, from like what verbiage you use for like dialogue responses, to the position of text, to the color of text, to is an icon colored or not. It's there's so much that goes into just one element of a very big game like Jagged Alliance, especially for modern era. It's fun. It's a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And you always try not to make the UI too cluttered and
Yep.
not to overwhelm the player with information that it's not needed for this situation. So
Yeah.
it's a balancing act, yeah.
Yep. Well, Nevron, or Nevrion, great segue. We actually do Q&A at the end of each of our streams. So we're going to do Q&A right now. So we have some questions that were asked during the stream. Now I need to make sure I'm on the chat. I'm going to post this, and hopefully my permissions allow me to post links. Let's see. They do, great. So we are going to do 2 t-shirt giveaways. We'll have Pavel come back out here and join us. We're going to take some questions here for the last 10 minutes. We have 2 questions we're going to answer, or 2 questions we're going to ask for our t-shirts at this point. thqnordic Brad, that's me, on the text channel. So we want Pavel. Hermes is a Pavel fan, I see. So Pavel. So we're gonna, yeah. Pavel's in chat, right? That's the new Jagged Alliance 3 Twitch. You can't see the link. I think someone is on the thqnordic channel. If someone's on the thqnordic channel, if they can post, I'm gonna put this in the Discord chat. If someone can post this for me, which is the TNCs and the 1 second, everybody. Let me make sure I get this posted. Usually one of our moderators is here to do this, but our our normal moderator actually had a dentist appointment, a last-minute dentist appointment, so we're having to run this one a little bit more entertaining. There you go. There's a text with the 2 links. Thank you, everybody. So we're gonna do 2 t-shirt giveaways. If you'll please, if I do select you to win, please message thqnordic Brad and direct message me on the channel, and then we'll get your email information, and then one of our lovely community management team will reach out to you via email to get you your information and get you your t-shirt. I'm gonna start this session with one of the first t-shirt giveaways, and it's gonna be family rules. So whoever gets the answer correct on chat is who will get the t-shirt. And would be bad. Okay, so what? Someone wants a NSFW Pavel model merc in the game. Like I guess like maybe like a streaker merc or something. I don't know if we're gonna do that.
We are now
No, don't-
spawning. It's a matter of time.
Yeah, someone will do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the mod that I'm gonna download, Pavel. Even though I like hanging out with you, I think I'll keep that one off my
I'm
machine.
not sure I'm gonna download it anyway.
So we'll go ahead and do the first question here. So go ahead and get your keyboards ready, and it'll be first answer. We'll get a Jagged Alliance 3 t-shirt like we're wearing. So everyone get their keyboards ready. I'll give everyone a minute or so to get ready for the first question. Need like a drum roll machine or something. So question number 1, we're gonna give two t-shirts. Question number 1, what was the device that we used as our reference for our UI from the late 90s, early 2000s? All right, Cordonor is the one who had it first. Cordonor, I see, was the first one that wrote Palm. So
Congrats.
Cordonor, congrats on your t-shirt. You're gonna want to message me and DM, and then I will get your email information and get it over to our community management team, and they'll reach back out to you. We'll do one more question, so there's 2 chances to win a t-shirt, and we'll do more of these for other streams. Don't worry. There's 2 chances to win today. So, thank you, Cordonor, very much for big congrats for winning the first t-shirt. So let me grab some questions from chat. We had some questions earlier. Let's see. So I saw this question a few different times. I'm just going to answer it on my side. So Jimmy Lee 4 Morecore was asking about DLC and if we're going to bring more mercs and whatnot. Right now, we're just focused on releasing the game. So we're not talking DLC plans. All the efforts, and I'm not exaggerating, all the efforts are going towards that July date. We want to make the game as good as it possibly can, all the polish, all the time. You know, we're not building DLC and building the game right now. We're just building the game. We want it to be as good as it possibly can be. So at the moment, we're just focused on the game. We're not even thinking about that yet. You know, we'll see how everything goes at launch, and you know, obviously, the team has some ideas. We talked about some like high level concepts of what those would be, but you know, right now it's bug hunting and polish and balance and fixing. And then if the launch goes great, then we'll be able to circle back around and see what we can do there. I know the team has a lot of ideas we've talked about.
Eyes on the prize, guys.
That's right. Eyes on the prize. Don't F it up, right? That's your famous quote, Pavel, right?
Yeah, that's stuck.
Yeah. Let's see. Nevron asks, I wonder if MERC will have a comeback in Jagged Alliance 3 next to AIM.
Maybe. Well, we don't want to spoil anything, but they were a big part, like previous titles, and people really like some of the characters there. They're very emblematic, and some might make an appearance. Who knows?
Yeah, never know. Never know. I like the coy answer. So we will keep it as a guess you'll have to see kind of response, and we'll let you take from that what you will. All right, next question. This is actually a good one. Spine Duke, did you test the UI on a smaller screen like the Steam Deck? I don't know when we were developing it in the beginning if we ever tested it explicitly on the Steam Deck, but we did mess with it in different resolutions, including larger resolutions, which is a big important part for me because I play in most of my games in super ultra wide and ultra wide. So we definitely talked about different resolution sizes and scaling the UI in order to help make it work for different ways. So that's that was something that was really important to us throughout the whole project. Let's see. Oh, here's a good question for you, Nelson. So Hermes4471 asked, what is the architecture that you guys are going for? I see a lot of colonial type buildings. I see some like rusted old fashioned or dilapidated buildings. Did you have a modern architecture at all? Something that would be a bit more American, perhaps? So really the question is like, what were we using for the inspiration for the architecture setup?
Oh, it's a mixture because the country of Grand Chien has its colonial past, so there are a lot of colonial mansions and other structures that are from that era. And we also have like fortifications from leftovers from the Second World War. And we had a lot of discussions in the art team about how we can bring the typical African uh, ways of building structures, both in the cities and outside of it. And we do have like a more modern look, West African look for the cities. And of course, we have all the more, let's say, quickly built constructions that people inhabit in some areas.
What was the key word? Shanty?
Shanty, yeah.
That was for the towns. Well, also there's like the World War II-esque architecture as well, because there is kind of an old war history to the area. So you have like the bunkers and the old like gun emplacements. So you get quite a range of different. It's an amalgamation of styles, which is really fun because it allows us to play with different looks and shapes and and visual design concepts. I really liked the range that we were able to produce, and that also comes out, I think, in the and this is not really a UI question, but it also comes out in the environment set too, because we picked a place that allows us to play with, and you can see it from our two different background images. We have the warm savanna, we have the lush green jungle, we have the cities, we have the ruins. There's different ideas we could play with when it comes to the visual palette that we had to work with.
Yeah, the scenery on the continent of Africa is so huge. You have so much variety, and we wanted to bring that into the game, to have like the range from the lush jungles, green jungles, to the hot savannas and everything in between. And when it comes to architecture, there are very interesting let's say combinations of different styles. In the game, I will leave that to the players, but there are a couple of buildings that I think our level designers had a lot of fun creating.
Yeah. Spine asked how many biomes did you aim for? I don't think we had an actual aim target. It was more of a range, because a lot of our biomes are also dramatically influenced by our weather and our day-night cycle. So we even have like sandstorms or rainstorms and day and afternoon and evening and night that all change both the visual experience as well as gameplay components. So it's something where we wanted to add a whole bunch of variation in both the visual and mechanical impacts of the different locations you go to. I think it wasn't we have to target 7 or 8 or anything like that. It was more, let's keep on going until we have a wide enough range that facilitates the experience. Like for example, I think I talked about this last stream, like the underground sewer map thing that has like the 3 or 4 levels, which is not really a biome, but it feels different than the interior buildings of a city or the mine shaft level or the open. Like they're all a little bit different. So for ITQ, the weather impacts a lot of different things. It impacts movement, accuracy, jam chance for your weapons. There's a lot of elements that weather and day night and environmental state changes to your decision making in the game. So absolutely. There's a question here that I always take because they're near and dear to my heart, so I like to answer these ones. Hi, Yui Hayu, I think is how you pronounce it, asked, can you release some of the nice African chant songs on your YouTube channel leading up to the release? I know we're going to do a music stream at some point with George, the composer. George and I worked really closely together on all the music, so we have a lot that we want to talk about on the music. I think the Jagged Alliance 3 soundtrack is, of all the games that I've worked on in my career, one of my favorite. The range is fantastic, to the point where those African chants, we actually got a South African choir group that we worked with, and have quite a few really, really cool, authentic South African chants that are in there that also have some modern flavors. Over top of it, we have some really authentic African drumming in there, and again, full orchestra, other stuff too. So there's a lot to talk about on the music front. But an interesting idea about maybe
Yeah.
releasing a few of the audio tracks ahead of time. That's cool.
Fun fact: we were just inputting the credits for the music today, so there's a lot of names there and a lot of people that were part of making the soundtrack sound like what it is today. So
yeah, it was a labor of love for a lot of people's part. It was really cool. There's a question here that I wanted to throw Pavel's way. Where was it? Oh yeah, well this may be also a question I'll have to help answer. But Spinedu asked, will there be options to customize the UI to make it more immersive, etc.? So do we have any kind of UI customization options in game?
customizations,
Not right now. But there's modding.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're aiming to have a lot of things moddable
Yeah.
after, not on launch. That's something that we want to stress, that we really want to finish the game and get it out in a very good state that people can enjoy. And shortly afterwards, we can release a lot of modding tools that you guys can work with and, I don't know, tweak.
Yep. The I will say it is one of those features that we originally had planned for. It was on our list of backlog items that didn't end up making the cut. There was a whole vision. I remember me and the Bouillons and Nelson talking about the like applications like Trillion, and where you could skin your application. So we actually had some old concepts of the snipe interface with multiple like visual backgrounds and like icon changes and whatnot. And there was an idea of maybe creating an interface where you could swap some of the like almost like changing your like your Windows palette or whatever. But that ended up making not making the cut when it comes to other features that were more important. But we're on the same page there, Spine Dude. We did have ideas like that, and we even experimented a little bit with what that could look like. It just didn't end up making the list. Let's see. System requirements. Pablo, do we publish? Yeah, DayG.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, do we publish those? The system requirements should be on our Steam page now, I believe, aren't they?
Requirements are on the Steam page. Yeah, you can find them there.
Yep. So yeah, if you want to see system requirements, they should be on our store pages, both min spec and recommended spec. Let's see. Hermes 4471. Are you guys bug hunting still, or mostly bug free? That's a good one for Pavel. What do you think?
It's
Yeah, what do you think?
it's like you said, it's a labor of love. It takes time.
Hey, Pavel, that's a good question.
No, to be honest, there's bugs, but there's not like real game breaking stuff, which is great. There's a lot of polish and a lot of, like Nelson said earlier, sanding the edges of a lot of stuff that might be very minor, but it might leave a not so good impression. So we want to like really handle those before we hit the publish button.
Yeah, and I think we also a decent amount of balance tweaks and discoveries of things that, because the game has so many different combinations of character skills and growth and weapon mods and environment modifiers and blah blah blah. So there's still a lot of that. Oh crap, when you combine this and this in this situation, all of a sudden this is not like the balance experience we wanted. So will we find all of those before release? Probably not, but that's a constant process of just, I know we just talked about this last dev stream. For those who missed dev stream 3, Bouillon was going through a melee weapon only run, and he realized while he was doing that maybe this is stronger than we wanted it to be. Like, this is kind of broken. So there's still that kind of process that is never ending, right? And even when you guys, we've done multiple closed beta rounds, we've gotten a lot of feedback, we've used that to find those types of problems, but that never stops. And I'm sure even though we'll think we're good, you guys will figure out ways to break balance in whole new mind-blowingly, oh my god, how in the world did you figure this out kind of ways. So that's just game development.
Yeah, those are kind of the best bugs that you can discuss.
Yeah.
But still, we need to close them. So.
Yep. And I love that someone did, by the way, someone did ask, and I think Giuliano's got an answer. Someone did ask, when is the release date going to be announced? No release date. We can answer it now. I love it. I feel so much better when that question is answered, and I don't have them anymore. Yeah, the release date is been made public. We got it coming up in just a couple months, July 14th, so it's right around the corner. Oh yes, there is multiplayer. There's a co-op. So there's co-op that you can play with your friends. So that's also there. Co-op's pretty great. So let's do our last t-shirt giveaway. By the way, my Victor, let me make sure I did.
Is that how you pronounce it?
It's Corindor, right? I need to make sure I write down. Oh yeah, Cordinor. So Cordinor, if you're on chat, make sure you reach out. Here is my
users in the forum. So
it's tough to this. This just shows you how much I appreciate Home and all of his work he does on the community side. So I'm trying to channel my inner Home, my inner community manager. Oh, okay, teaching Nordic UI as well. Perfect. So we'll do one more t-shirt giveaway. And again, this is from previously in the stream. So I have a question if you guys all want to get your keyboards ready. It's gonna be a quick type, so it's not like a long phrase or anything. Perfect. Okay, teaching Nordic. Awesome. I'm glad you got that information. Make sure you capture it so we get it over to via email to the community team. So here we go. Second t-shirt giveaway. You only need to get one. So whoever gets one of the first ones will get this. Name one of the late 90s, early 2000s instant messaging that we used as a reference for Snipe. Oh, all right. Hugh, you got one of them. ICQ. That's right. With ICQ, AIM, Trillion, MSN, all of them would have been valid. But you got it real fast. ICQ was one of the ones that we used. Skype was not one that we used actually, because Skype came much later. Skype actually is like mid to late 2000s, I think, is when Skype launched. But AIM and all of those were all from the old days. So congratulations to Yui Hayu. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but congrats. You got yourself a Jagged Alliance 3 t-shirt modeled by our friend Pavel over there. And we'll make sure to please reach out to me or the thqnordic channel. Okay, Boomer. I mean, yeah, well, when you're making a game that's set in the late 90s, early 2000s, definitely Okay, Boomer is part of the conversation there for sure. But yeah, reach out. We'll get you Yoo-hoo. Oh, I get it. Yoo-hoo. Got you. Makes sense. We'll get you a t-shirt and you'll have a chance to support your cool Jagged Alliance 3 swag. So reach out to thqnordic or THUN Brad and we'll get that taken care of. I think that's pretty much going to do it for us. Pavel, thanks for joining for the quick question and answer at the end. Now that you're Pavel famous, I guess we have to have you on every single one, right? Like everyone's like, Pavel. It's the whole thing.
Famous is not like real famous, so.
It's close there. It's almost there.
I don't know. I guess after the not safe for work mod, maybe.
Right. Oh man, don't speak that into existence. That's going to be our rule 42 for whatever it is for Jagged Alliance 3 of the Pavel mod. Yeah. Oh boy. Nelson, so much fun.
It's not affiliated officially with me, so.
Right. Nelson, thank you so much for being on here. It's always great chatting with you.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for everything. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, so for those who didn't notice, Nelson gave a small little gift to the community in his last devs. Nelson had us upload a wallpaper he made with some of the background art for the loading screens. So we'll probably have more that we'll release over time if everyone asks really nicely. Papa Nelson will maybe give us gifts of more wallpapers in the future, but that wallpaper is really cool. And if you're really jazzed about Jagged Alliance 3, definitely go grab the wallpaper and you can use it. We're gonna probably so I actually have a meeting on Friday to discuss because there's some updates to the dev stream schedule. I was hoping I could give you guys a more concrete date today, but it most likely will be in 2 weeks. So not next Thursday, but the Thursday after that. We're trying to stream every other week right now. So you'll have a week off and then we'll be back. But we'll try to get an actual more concrete schedule posted as we're kind of going through our pre-release and driving up to release. So worst case scenario, it should be about 2 weeks. Until then, you'll see the content posted up on our YouTube channel, YouTube thqnordic Insider, and you can also watch the VOD here. So you won't be without us, at least as far as recordings are concerned. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks everyone on the team in the background, Simon and everyone there helping us produce this thing. Had a lot of fun chatting with you, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Bye.